grandfather, uncle, and he was a friend. He lived a selfless and adventurous life. He was always willing to help others. Over the years, he helped me with a lot of different things. He'd come over the house, he'd help with projects, he'd give advice. He was always there. He showed up without hesitation. He'd walk around the neighborhood. He'd help people in need. He'd do yard work, he'd shovel snow, he'd pick up pine cones.
Thanks.
Right, Steve? Phil? I remember hearing the story. He was turning onto Eldred Street, which is very close to his home, and he saw an elderly lady raking leaves, and he knew this woman needed a little help. So he pulls over, and he helps her. And I think he even went back to the house and got the leaf blower, and then he goes back to help her. And that's who he was. If he saw someone in need, he gave what he could with no questions asked. When I was around 12, I'd have a paper route. I had 2 or 3. He would drive me around every morning.
I was in the back sometimes.
Every morning he'd drive me around. And that was before he would have to go to work and do his own thing. But that's who he was. I remember a visit to the hospital recently. I walked in, and he's sitting in the hallway, and he was probably people watching. There was nothing else to do in this hospital but that. So I sat down next to him. Pretty soon, there's an older gentleman. His name is Leo. He sits down next to me, and Leo was in the Marines, and he was proud of it. He wore a World War II hat, and he started to tell the story about how he ended up in the hospital. And it was a little, it was wild. About how he was driving his vehicle, and then there's 3 police cars behind him. Yeah, I thought it was wild, Leo. But he had us dying in laughter. It was a memorable moment, considering where we were. And it put life into perspective. Each picture tells a story. My father looks happy in most every one of these pictures. That's how he saw life. He greeted life with joy, kindness, and with a smile. A lot of you are in these pictures with him. My father had a special way of showing love to the people that he cared about. He would make cards for people. There's a bunch of them right over there that my sister had collected over the years. He'd make them for birthdays, special occasions, Mother's Day, Christmas. Most of the cards are signed "Your Secret Admirer." And when he delivered these cards, you would never see him. He never missed a chance to make someone feel remembered and feel loved. He was a humble man. Cheers, Dad, until we meet again. So have a drink, socialize, tell stories, laugh, cry, enjoy yourselves. And whatever. Thank you all for being here today. My father would be proud. And
Don't let the small stuff.
don't split the small stuff. That's a common phrase to use. But also a special thank you to the staff.
Absolutely.
They're over there in the corner. Katie, Kim. Amanda's not here, Clyde, but all you guys, really, thank you. And one more thing. So if you've read this card, and I'll read it. So it says, Carpe diem, seize the day. We're all food worms, food for worms, lads. Believe it or not, each and every one in this room someday will stop breathing and turn cold and die. Carpe diem, seize the day, make your lives extraordinary. And that's what the message is. Because it's in where this is on one of his paintings. Steve, I think it's on the painting you have. It's underneath. And this actually came from Dead Poets Society, Roger Williams. And it's a great quote. But the message is, like, take advantage of life. Because it is a gift.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for that. I'm just going to piggyback on what you just said and offer an opportunity for some other people afterwards who might want to share a word or two if you want to. I just want to say thank you. It's overwhelming to see the people here who represent all of the stages and perspectives of a life well lived. I mean, so many people from so many parts of his life. We've got people from Lexington, from the old neighborhood on Turning Mill, and Roger Williams, and just everybody. And thank you for being here. Because I think when we put that all together, each of us has a little piece of who Charlie was. But when we put it together, we all have a little bit of a bigger whole of that perhaps none of us have individually. And so thank you all for that. I was trying to think what to say. There's so many and so many stories, and so I narrowed it kind of to three lessons from Charlie that I'm now going to share with you. And by the way, I appreciate that today is hopefully a day of both laughter and perhaps tears in equal measure, because they're both part of life, right? So the first lesson from Charlie, Dad, is to be curious. Question everything and do not take anything for granted. And a cherished memory was our dinner conversations, which often went well into the night, across that same table, well into the night, because he understood in a way that I have never seen from, that just one little piece of additional information or an additional perspective can change everything. Like an algebra equation, right? When you change one variable, the entire outcome changes. And so that was lesson number one. Be curious and always question everything, because it will deepen your understanding, and we can all really be better for that. The second one is no excuses. Circumstances are simply an excuse. That's not to even be considered. We used to drive to Long Island, right, to my cousin's house, no less than 5 times a year from Boston. Whether it was Uma's birthday, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, I'm sure I'm missing a few other events in there. And there was one time I was driving by myself from New Hampshire, in a snowstorm that was getting progressively worse as I was heading down the highway. So back in the day, I pulled over, of course, to find a payphone. So you know what that is. And I said, I don't know if I can make it because the storm is really bad. And in that way that he had about him, he said, drive slow, we'll see you soon. Excuses were not an option, but because of that, we have the relationship with the people, with my cousins on Long Island and the people there that was deeper and more meaningful because the circumstances didn't matter. Because we were there 5 times a year, that's just what we did. And so my cousins who are more like siblings are here today, I appreciate all of that. And then the third lesson is to jump in. Literally jump in at some points. I think that we all have a voice sometimes inside of us that comes up in that moment of hesitation. And it's that voice. You have an idea of something that you want to do. But then the voice will say, but what if I'm not that good at it? What if I'm wrong? Or what will other people think? And I don't think Dad had that voice. It didn't exist in his brain. Whether we were on a road trip and he says, oh, only 60 minutes away is a really old friend I haven't seen in 10 years. Let's go knock on the door. So it's but we would do it and it would always have a meaningful outcome. No excuses. And then one story that people may not know, I had a friend, a family friend who was participating in a sailboat race around the world. And they had stopped in Boston Harbor at Rose Wharf. So we had gone, and there was about 30 people that had boarded one of the boats for a reception. And as we were coming off the boat, the dock started to sink. And of course, my thought is, let me run back on the boat. Let me save myself. But, not Charlie. And or you think, wait, maybe the tide's coming in, and so the water's just rising a little bit. But Dad, he knew what was happening. He saw it for what it was, and without one single second of hesitation, and by the way, this was May in Boston Harbor, he saw that there was a man in a wheelchair in about the middle of that wharf that was starting to literally sink. No hesitation, jumped in the water. In May, I can't even imagine how cold that water was. He pulls the man off to the dock where other people were able to pull him out. And then he went back for the man's wheelchair, which was starting to sink. So we get out, and that's not even the end of it. So we get out, no fanfare, no nothing. I'm like, Dad, we gotta get you home, we gotta get dry clothes, Hey, we should call it, that was amazing, nothing. He said, wait, you have friends with the hotel room, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, let's just go there. He took my friend's clothes, changed, we took the wet clothes home. He put on a new outfit, which barely fit him and looked kind of funny because it was not his style. And he's like, let's go, we're going out to dinner. That was the plan, that's what we're doing. So we went off to Quincy Market or wherever we were going to have our dinner that night as if nothing had happened, because that's how he was. So that all led me to a saying that I hope perhaps you will join me in thinking about once in a while. If I'm trying to find my true north, or I'm trying to figure out what is the right thing to do, I'm going to say, what would Charlie do? What would Charlie do? I feel like it's a little bit of permission to do something a little crazy sometimes. What would Charlie do? And don't let that voice of hesitation stop you. So what would Charlie do? And I'm just going to end. There's a poem. I actually opened up to this on the day that he passed, and I was like, wow, this is him. Can you hold it for me, Alex? This is it's called Truth. And I think this describes how Charlie went about his way in the world and how he showed his love for people. So it's called Truth by Jackie Morris, The Dreams of Bears. If I said that my love for you was like the spaces between the notes of a wren's song, would you understand? Would you perceive my love to be therefore hardly present, almost nothing?
Or would you feel how my love is wrapped around by the richest and wildest song? And if I said that my love for you is like the time when the nightingale is absent from our twilight world, would you hear it as silence? Nothing? No love? Or as anticipation of that rich current of music which fills the heart, soul, body, and mind? And if I said that my love for you is like the hair's breath, would you feel it to be transient, so slight a thing? Or would you see it as life-giving, wild, a thing that fills the blood and sets the hair running?
Beautiful.
Okay, with that, let me just open this up and say, first of all, while we're sharing some stories, feel free to move about, get a drink, and have some food. Don't feel like you have to. Would anybody else? I'm turning the road.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. In October of 2019, there was a vicious windstorm in Lexington, actually all over Massachusetts. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, a huge tree fell on our house. We had my daughter and her family with us because their house was undergoing renovation. And there was a little 2-year-old in a room that was just near where the tree fell. Fortunately, nobody was injured. But there was a huge crash, and the whole entryway was destroyed. And when Krista said, jump in, that's exactly what Charlie did. He jumped through a broken window. Out of nowhere. It was amazing. We are panic-stricken. Water is pouring in the house. We have young children screaming. And Charlie came tearing through a broken glass window. It was a huge picture window. And he did a tremendous job helping us, sort of catching the water in buckets, and we called the fire department, but he was so helpful. And this was so typical of Charlie. He was such a great neighbor. And the term jumping in really prompted me to say that, because that's exactly what he did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, I've known Charlie since Charlie, Susan, and baby Krista moved into their house approximately 1969 or 7. And when I first met Charlie,
69.
now Charlie was a great athlete. He was always proud of the fact that in his senior year, he scored 34 points in a basketball game for Colgate against Syracuse. That was a big thing, big time basketball. And then Charlie became a coach in Little League, and our son Dan and Alex played, and that was one of the reasons that we actually became coach. And I think we started in, where's Alex? I think we started maybe in Tebow, and for several years. That was before Alex learned hockey, which became a great hockey player. But anyway, many stories. We did many bike rides. We would start at his office on Long Wharf and ride 126 miles to Provincetown. And we'd leave at 2:30 in the morning. We did that 10 times. And when I'd say to Charlie, we're gonna ride in 2 weeks. When's the last time you rode your bike? And he said, I don't know, 5 months ago? So he said, I'll go out and train on Wednesday, 2 days before. Because Charlie always did it, he always made it. And then after these bike rides, Susan and my wife Fern would meet us in downtown Boston. We'd have dinner together the next day, that night. And Susan, my wife Fern, and Susan, Charlie, and I had birthdays within about a week from one another in July. And we would celebrate our birthdays together, and Fern would join us. We did that for many, many, many years. We made many trips to Baltimore to see the Red Sox play at Camden Yards. probably did that 7 or 8 times. So Charlie was always great. He would go along and do anything. He spent a lot of time at our neighborhood pool. We renovated the pool. He spent a couple of 100 hours with me. He did the work pro bono, and we redesigned the pool, met all the standards, and he would do it. As everyone has said, he was an outstanding neighbor, and I was the one that Alex referred to. He'd come around the winter time, help me shovel a 50-foot driveway, only shoveling. And then we would pick up in the fall, perhaps 40 or 50, 42-gallon bags of leaves, pine cones. Charlie was great. He would just come over and do it. So lots and lots of memories. And I just want to say, Charlie, rest in peace.
Got to work with Charlie at Roger Williams University. Actually, I was his boss, which was surprising and not really very much what it was. There's many of us from Roger Williams who are here, and I bet some of them will be coming up when my family's here. I'm not very good at this. And a good friend from Amsterdam who's
Can you hold the microphone?
Sorry, good friend from Amsterdam who's a friend of Charlie's too. So if I could, I made a bit of an outline. I'll try to keep it short, but I hope there's a lot to say in trying to talk about him as a teacher and a colleague and an architect. It started out when I was a rookie dean, somewhat coming in on a bit of an emergency, and I had to do a class visit to Charlie's class. And it was in a period when people made presentations, if they did drawings, on these things called overhead projectors. And, Charlie's as big as Charlie was, and his hands are as big as, flippers. And he's fumbling around with this plastic, and it looks like it's all, I'm like, oh God, this is going to be a disaster. And then he started drawing. And it was unbelievable, and it was in a class in site design. And he was showing about how sun angles work. And this drawing emerged with this big chunky thing called the grease pencil. And it was incredible. And I should have asked him for it. I asked for a lot of other things from Charlie, but I didn't ask for that drawing. It was incredible. And I wrote in the evaluation that I couldn't imagine that the students could appreciate how good that was. And I think he said to me, thanks, babe. And I'm like, I don't know about you all, he called me babe periodically. I'm proud of it. So over time, our daughters, Lauren and Geneva, would come to school with me sometimes, and they would draw, like probably a lot of parents drawing in their parents' office. And Charlie came in one day, and he's looking down, and he goes, Kenneth, doesn't your father get you good stuff to draw? So like a week later, wonderful colored pencils appeared for them to do their work that Charlie bought for them. And so they started getting to be friends over time. We evolved the school, and me coming in and Charlie already having been there for a few years, the school became the School of Architecture, Art, and Historic Preservation from the School of Architecture. And that was a somewhat controversial thing, but we all agreed to do it. But what I told everybody was that we had to make the school that big, otherwise Charlie wouldn't have fit. Because his art, which I had no idea about at the time, I knew about his architectural work and his preservation work. A lot of you may or may not know a couple of really important things that Charlie did relative to preservation. With Amsterdam Hagenah McLean, they won a national award from the National Trust for Historic Preservation for preserving the Baltimore City Hall. And also in a thing that you can imagine, if I can tell this story a little bit, just pull me off whenever I think some of these are pretty important that I bet you all in the family know, but maybe other people don't know. There was a citizens group called Save Fenway that was trying to save Fenway Park when the Red Sox were thinking of moving out around 495 somewhere. And they asked Charlie to join. I don't know how that happened. But Charlie then started doing drawings for free, like working with the neighborhood pool and shoveling the driveway, to add seats to Fenway Park and to increase revenue so that the team could stay there in such an important place. Well, the Red Sox didn't like that very much because they were all set. They already sort of were exploring it. How do you go against Fenway Park unless you're really ready to do it? And Charlie's scheme, also supported by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, made an enormous difference in Fenway Park being maintained. I think kind of in his spare time or along the way, but he did other things. And so once I got to know Charlie a little bit more, we had a chance to do a remarkable set of projects. A person who had developed the English Channel Tunnel as a private venture between England and France, lived in Lexington, lived in Concord, and had enough money to give a gift to the school to think of macro projects, very large-scale projects that would be of enormous benefit, like building a tunnel, but architectural ones. And so there was an idea, the first one out of 3, was to build an artificial island off the coast of Gaza as an economic development zone for the Palestinians, and so that there would be an economically viable life for citizens of Gaza. And the project gained attention from multiple people who were actually gauging whether this could be possible. And meanwhile, our students had a chance to work on these projects of such incredible vision to show that architects could frame whole living environments, could be involved in diplomacy, and that the projects that you might do might help international relations, things like that. And it was an incredible success to the point where we had a company, all this is not written down anywhere, but there's a firm at Rockefeller Center called W.P. Carey Company. They invented the real estate investment trust as a financial instrument. And so W.P. Carey was sort of orbiting around to see whether we might start a real estate trust to see about raising billions of dollars to create this plan that Charlie and colleague Patrick Charles, who was intimately involved with Charlie, and the students, to see about a viable, large-scale development of cities and landscape and economic development at school with undergraduate students. And so that went along, and Charlie was the guy to do it because, one, he would, as everyone has said so far, he would do it, right? He would help. But he had the capacity and the vision to imagine such huge things. The next year, the Undersecretary General of the United Nations attended our presentations, the head of the Global Infrastructure Fund in Tokyo, various leaders from around the world. It was really something, and we actually floated the idea with the university to see whether we could be a partner in it. And we found that it would, even at a 0.5% role for the university, and this is because it worked, sort of, with Charlie's vision, the amount that it would take to put aside from our endowment to undertake the project, we just couldn't do it, and that was the beginning of multi-unravelings, which happened in large architecture projects. But just to say that Charlie's vision as an architect and as a teacher was that large. The next year was rebuilding, reconstruction in Kabul in Afghanistan. The next year was after Katrina to look at trying to find large-scale ways to make suburban, sustainable redevelopment in New Orleans after all that devastation. And then finally, the president appreciated Charlie so much, he gave him a special fellowship, and he was designing, which I'm giving a lot of these documents to you all. I have a bunch, and I'll certainly give anything else I can find. Shaded cities, ideas for shade over habitations with solar collectors and other things, and an incredible vision. And so I just wanted to put those out there from his teaching. And I'm not going to give up this mic for a little bit, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry at all. So, and then, just from what you said, and these things, like, when did he do all this? He was always at school, and he never said a lot to me, or maybe to a lot of us. He'd smile at us, or call us babe, or put but he was always there, and he was ready for whatever. And then we heard a little bit about these gifts, and I wouldn't imagine that we were the only people to receive gifts that we didn't know who they were from at first. But there started being gifts that would appear at our house on our front porch in Newport, Rhode Island, which is about, 90 miles from Lexington. And the gifts would appear, and there would never be a knock on the door. There would never be, and he didn't mention it. And so 2-3 years went by, and I can't believe in a way that I didn't know who it was for a while. And then again, the little thing, there's these things in universities called drop-add forms, where if a student has to drop a class and add another one. And so Charlie was an advisor, and he had to sign that, and those of us who know Charlie know his signature kind of looks like this. And it looked just like the cards that said from Santa on our door. And so like 4 or 5 years later, I was like, Charlie, it's you. And he goes, there's like 5 or 6 people in the office. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, it's you. And he had him. And he said, oh, babe, that's what I could do. And so the gifts appeared. They started out small, and pretty soon they only for our daughters at first, and then for myself and my wife Mary. And finally, we invited him over for an early Christmas, sort of after our friend from the Netherlands was teaching, who's a lot like Charlie. And so Charlie came over, and there was no knock on the door. He came in the side door of our house. He knocked on the side door. And he said, there's some stuff out on the porch. Because he had left that year's load out there. And then we all had the Christmas holiday together. There's a little bit more about his architectural practice, because I know a couple of people have said things, and I'd just like to mention a couple of things, if that's all right. Again, I mentioned the Baltimore City Hall, a national award. And maybe if Bart Mispelblom may say a few things, he knows some other things that Charlie revealed to him. What I know of when Charlie worked with Paul Rudolph, who was the dean at Yale when Charlie was a student, and then at Desmond and Lord, Charlie at Desmond and Lord was part of the Logan Airport air traffic control tower. He also was a lead project architect on the UMass Dartmouth campus, that megastructure brutalist campus that is either infamous or famous, depending on how you look at it. And at Amsler Hagenah McLean, the Wheaton College Student Center, and again, the Save Fenway. What an incredible thing that Charlie has done by going where he's needed and wanted and had an idea. And the ideas that he's had have always been so important. And I hope somebody else will talk more about his paintings. But I'll just say one last thing about that is when we found out that Charlie was doing all these paintings, again, you all may have known that, somebody mentioned that he had done 1 or 2, and then we started seeing them. And I said, kiddingly, Charlie, you can have a show here if you let me name it. And so he said, okay, babe. And so I got to name the show along the way, because it's like, when did he do all this? And he did it along the way. He painted wherever, and he painted Mother's Day and birthdays and all those things all along the way, as he did so many other things. And I appreciate being here, and I hope I didn't go on too long, but just to share some things I knew that maybe you all may not know.
I have a note as well. My name is Bart Mispelblom Beyer. You might not know me. I'm from the Netherlands. A year or 12 ago, Stephen asked us to, me and my wife Charlotte, we are architects, we have an architectural firm in Amsterdam, asked us to come over and do 2 semesters in Roger Williams. He gave us the opportunity to do complete semesters, so workshops and lectures and projects, which is a lot of work. And of course, we had our firm at the same time, so we considered doing it. But on the other hand, then we needed somebody to help us, and to help us understand the American systems and a little bit knowledge about the American students. But we needed simple boots on the ground as well. So this is where Charlie comes in. Steve proposed to us, and of course to Charlie and to the other side of the line, for him to do this. And by then we didn't know him, of course, and he didn't know us, so he wasn't just going to do it just like that. So he decided to come over to the Netherlands and to check out who these guys were, if they were worth it at all to put so much effort in and time and so forth. So I picked them up from the airport. And we're very friendly, sitting in the car, and he immediately started questioning me about my visions and my knowledge of the architecture, and especially on the American architecture. So at some point in time he said, name me some favorites of your American architects. And I said, well, I have a few. You might not know them because these are not the mainstream ones. I said, just come on, tell me. I said, well, I like architects that integrate green in their buildings and really already do it for decades. Who are they then? I said, well, Kevin Rose, John Diclo, you don't know them. He said, how did you know this? I said, know what? Of course, he worked there, but I didn't know that before. So in the car, we got the stamp approved, and we became really close. So the purpose of the visit was to visit the sites that we have chosen in the Netherlands for the American students, just to draw them out of their American context. And Charlie was the perfect person to help us and to give form to this, to the courses over the year. He learned us a lot how to deal with the students. He was eloquent and witty and friendly, and then suddenly he said, okay, I've had enough of your bullshit, next one. Typical Charlie, of course, we've heard it before. But much more than this, we had lunches together and dinners together, and like Steve so we did a Santa together. He made us feel part of the family, and that's really, really special. Let's see where I was. Well, as I told you, we had deep conversations about architecture, and that went on and on, but also about the normal things in life of every student, persons. We share a love of drawing and painting. I'm a drawer, Charlotte's a painter, and Charlie's both, so it gave a firm bond. I think I can say I cherish the moments that we have worked with Charlie really deeply. At the same time, he remained a sort of enigma as a character. I think you'll understand what I mean. But I'm really proud to be able to work with him. So I say, wherever you are, thank you, Charlie.